each other about what it means to be connected to God, connected to one another in love, and connected to serve. We're here with Reverend Jim Flagg. I'm Reverend Valerie Hudson, and this is Ben Hinshaw. And this is our Christmas episode. This is the time of year when we come together. We are here in a set of something that we're doing here at the church called Bethlehem Village. And we are just wanting to visit with each other about what Christmas means. But let's start out with the big mysteries of Christmas. The big mysteries. How about the word Xmas?
Okay.
What does that mean? Is it unchristian to say Merry Xmas or write that on a card? Does it mean something derogatory? What does that mean?
Well, of course, it's always dependent upon the intentions of the person who actually writes it. If it's a non-Christian, then it literally is taking Christ out of Christmas. But if it's a Christian who is fluent in Greek, then it's not so much because the X is a symbol for Christ himself. It's the first letter of the word Christ in Greek, Christos. So it does not have to be derogatory. It can indeed mean just an abbreviation for Christ. But in our society, and I see how that can be taken that way, because in our society we have taken Christ out of so many other things that it does indeed look as if you have removed Christ from the word Christmas. And so, but it all of course depends on the intentions of the person.
Or if you're taking notes in class.
Yes, exactly. If you were taking notes in class, which I'm guilty of myself, Christ, it was a capital X in my writings. And that would save me, 3 seconds of other writing.
I saved 4. So.
Oh, you write slower than I do.
Well, and I will say, even for those of us that aren't fluent in Greek, it's still a cross. It is still symbolic of the crucifixion, which is Christ, a representation. And the Romans did use a cross of an X to execute some people.
That's correct.
It wasn't as common, but St. Andrew, I believe, was crucified on an X-shaped cross.
That's right.
So it's not taking it out, it's just placing it for a moment.
Right.
But symbolically, it's still there.
Okay, the next big question, the virgin birth. What does that mean? How do we understand that or misunderstand that?
Well, one of the complications we get into is, and again, Reverend Flagg is much better at his Hebrew than I am, but the word that they actually use in the Hebrew prophecies is maiden.
Right.
And when they repeat it into the Gospels, they're still using maiden. And so a lot of people have taken that to mean it was not a virgin birth, that it was a maiden, that just means she wasn't married, and that the virgin birth isn't really a big deal. But it kind of is an important element of the story because there's a lot of people that are maidens that haven't had kids, or that aren't married that have had kids. And so that's what kind of brings this story a greater element, is the fact that she was a virgin. Otherwise, really wouldn't have been very noteworthy.
Well, and you're exactly right there. And the implication of the word, even though it doesn't mean virgin specifically, is that she is pure, that she is a maiden. She is one who is not known by another man at this point, which we say, oh, well, it's a virgin. And the entire law of Moses, the law of Moses. If a woman, as we all know, if you look at Deuteronomy 21 and 22, you see these incredible passages that talks about if a woman is found with a man that is not her husband, then she's brought to her father's doorstep and stoned to death.
So if Mary is so pure and so wonderful, she's going to be following Mosaic law.
Oh, absolutely.
Which would then mean that she was a virgin.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, and one of the other elements I've heard mentioned a time or two is that the Jewish custom of engagement is not quite the same as the engagement customs we have here, that there is a greater intimacy. It's beyond what we call engagement, but not quite what we call marriage, and that at times it was actually kind of okay. But again, Joseph was chosen to raise God's son. He's probably going to be a pretty good Jew. And so we respect that it's probably still a pretty chaste relationship.
Exactly. And you're right, there were indeed cases, the way the law is written, that if it is, if a woman's found to be child and it's not of her engaged or her husband, that you get in trouble. If it's her engaged, then the way they looked at engagement was a legal contract. It was something that was legally done, and then there was just the formal marriage ceremony that took place after that point, which is what is so amazing about Joseph and the way he wants to have her dismissed quietly, because the only way that he can break this engagement is through a legal divorce. But he didn't want to put Mary first, shame her in front of the entire town, nor did he want her to be subject to the law of Moses, which is to have her stoned, because he still cared for her. I mean, it shows incredible mercy by Joseph.
That would have changed the Christmas story quite a bit.
It would have totally messed it up.
Okay. One of the other big questions and things that we think about is three kings. Do you know the names of the three kings that came to see Jesus in Bethlehem on the night that he was born?
So, yeah, if you've seen the song, let me get to the song real quick. Of course, we only have it in the song because the Bible doesn't give us three kings. That's one of those great trivia questions. If you want to say, how many kings came to see Jesus? And you can always, people are going to say, oh, it was three kings. Wrong, because first off, we don't know exactly how many, because that number is never given. We just assume that because there were three gifts. And then all we're told it was magi, which were wise men. Astrologers, exactly. Who studied the stars. Yeah, exactly. Who had studied the stars and now brought these gifts, however many there were of them, to worship the Christ child. So, while we might indeed, remember Melchior and Balthasar and what was the other one? Casper, thank
Ringo.
you. No.
John and Paul and George.
Yeah. They were kings. Rock and roll. That's right. That's true.
So, did they arrive there on that night that the child was born? Because so many times, we have a manger scene, and then we have, Mary and Joseph and all the animals, and then we have the king is right there with the shepherds.
Yeah, I love that. In my nativity, in my front yard, I'm as guilty as anybody else. That's exactly right. We have the shepherds with the little lambs, all cute, and then we have our mind's eye. We have this picture of the three wise men, or the way they're dressed, look like three kings entering into the picture, bearing their gifts on high. It's a wonderful picture, but that's not what the Bible says took place. Instead, what it tells us that by the time that the wise men get there, that they're not even in the stable anymore. It says they came to a house where they were staying. Now, because of Jewish law, we know they had to be there. We had to be there for 8 days for Jesus' circumcision. We know that 33 days later, we had to have Mary's purification ceremony at the temple, and that's where we find out that Jesus' parents are poor. Mary and Joseph are destitute because the only thing they can offer, instead of a lamb and a turtle dove, they have to offer two turtle doves, which is the poor man's sacrifice. But the law made case for that, which just goes to show God's mercy of that. And so Mary's purified, so that's 41 days that they're there. Okay, so they're probably sticking around for that long. But we know that it's been a year and a half to 2 years, because when they go to Herod and they tell him when the star appeared 2 years ago, the earliest we can, and of course we're assuming here that the star would probably appear would be at least a conception, right? So, we got about a 2-year thing, which is why Herod, when he sends out his decree, he wants to have all the newborns 2 years and younger killed, to make sure he catches the Christ, the one who was born to be king of the Jews.